Have you ever come across a Bible verse that stops you in your tracks? One that feels like a riddle at first, but the more you sit with it, the more it begins to unravel profound truths about life, faith, and God's mysterious ways. For me, Ecclesiastes 11 verse 1 is one of those verses. It says, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days." At first glance, it sounds almost poetic, maybe even a little cryptic. What does it mean to cast bread upon the waters? And how does this ancient wisdom apply to our modern, fast-paced lives? This verse isn't just a standalone statement. It's part of a larger passage, Ecclesiastes 11 verses 1 through 6, that's packed with timeless principles about generosity, faith, and trusting God's timing. It's a call to live boldly, give freely, and embrace the unknown with a heart full of trust. But here's the thing, this isn't just theoretical advice. It's a practical, life-changing truth that has the power to transform the way we think, live, and interact with the world around us. Think about it for a moment. How often do we hold back because we're afraid of the unknown? How often do we hesitate to give, whether it's our time, our resources, or our love, because we're not sure if it will pay off? Ecclesiastes 11 verse 1 challenges us to break free from that mindset. It invites us to step out in faith, to sow seeds of kindness and generosity, and to trust that God will bring about a harvest in His perfect timing. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. This verse isn't just about giving. It's about living with a sense of divine expectancy. It's about believing that when we align our actions with God's principles, He will honor our efforts in ways that go beyond our wildest dreams. It's about understanding that life isn't just about what we can see and control. It's about partnering with God in the unseen, trusting that He is always at work, even when we can't see the full picture. In this exploration, we're going to unpack the hidden divine message in Ecclesiastes 11 verse 1 and its surrounding verses. We'll dive into what it means to cast your bread upon the waters, how this principle can be practiced in everyday life, and how it has the power to transform not only our own lives, but also the lives of those around us. Whether you're someone who loves digging into the deeper meanings of Scripture, or you're simply looking for practical ways to live out your faith, this message is for you. So, grab a cup of coffee, open your heart, and let's journey together into the rich, life-giving wisdom of Ecclesiastes 11 verse 1. By the end of this, my hope is that you'll feel inspired to live with greater generosity, deeper faith, and an unshakable trust in God's promises. Because here's the truth. When we cast our bread upon the waters, we're not just giving, we're participating in something eternal. And that changes everything. Before we proceed, I invite you to watch a short presentation that reveals how to unlock God's miracles and step into your divine calling. You'll find a link to the life-changing presentation in the description below. Be sure to watch it after this one. That's my special gift to you for coming across this video. Moving on. In ancient times, casting bread upon the waters was likely a reference to the practice of sowing seed by the Nile River. Farmers would scatter their seeds along the riverbanks, trusting that when the waters receded, the seeds would take root and produce a harvest. It was an act of faith, patience, and trust in the natural process. Symbolically, this verse is a call to generosity, faith, and trust in God's timing. It encourages us to give freely, even when we don't see immediate results. The bread represents our resources, time, money, energy, or talents, and the waters symbolize the unknown or the unpredictable circumstances of life. When we give generously and trust God with the outcome, He promises that our efforts will not be in vain. To fully grasp the message of Ecclesiastes 11 verse 1, it's helpful to look at the surrounding verses, 2 to 6. These verses expand on the theme of taking bold, faith-filled actions even when the future is uncertain. Verse 2, "Give a portion to 7, or even to 8, for you know not what disaster may happen on earth." This verse emphasizes the importance of diversifying our generosity. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Spread your kindness and resources widely, because you never know where the greatest need or the greatest blessing might come from. Verse 3, "If the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves on the earth." This reminds us that certain things in life are beyond our control. Just as clouds must release their rain, there are seasons and cycles in life that we can't predict or change. Instead of worrying, we're called to trust God's timing. Verse 4, he who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. This is a warning against overthinking and procrastination. If we wait for the perfect conditions, we'll never take action. Faith requires us to step out even when the circumstances aren't ideal. Verse 5, as you do not know the way the Spirit comes to the bones in the womb of a woman with child, so you do not know the work of God who makes everything. This verse humbles us by reminding us that there are mysteries in life we'll never fully understand. God's ways are higher than ours, and our role is to trust Him, not to figure everything out. Verse 6, in the morning sow your seed, and at evening withhold not your hand, for you do not know which will prosper, this or that, or whether both alike will be good. This is a call to consistent effort. Whether it's morning or evening, whether the season feels right or not, keep sowing, keep giving, keep trusting. The message of Ecclesiastes 11 verses 1 through 6 is incredibly practical and transformative. Here's how it can impact our everyday lives. 1. Generosity becomes a lifestyle. When we cast our bread upon the waters, we learn to give without expecting immediate returns. This shifts our focus from selfishness to selflessness. Whether it's helping a neighbor, donating to a cause, or simply offering a listening ear, generosity becomes a natural part of who we are. 2. Faith overcomes fear. This passage challenges us to step out in faith, even when the outcome is uncertain. It reminds us that God is in control, and our role is simply to obey and trust Him. This mindset can free us from the paralysis of fear and indecision. 3. Patience is cultivated. In a world of instant gratification, Ecclesiastes 11 verse 1 teaches us the value of patience. Just as a farmer waits for the harvest, we're called to trust that our efforts, whether in relationships, work, or ministry, will bear fruit in due time. 4. We learn to embrace uncertainty. Life is full of unknowns, but this passage encourages us to embrace the mystery. Instead of trying to control every outcome, we can rest in the knowledge that God is working all things together for good. 5. Consistency leads to impact. Verse 6 reminds us to keep sowing, day in and day out. Small, consistent acts of kindness and faithfulness can lead to significant impact over time. This principle applies to everything from parenting to career goals to spiritual growth. So, how can we put this wisdom into practice? Here are some actionable ideas. Give generously. Look for opportunities to bless others, whether through financial giving, volunteering, or simply sharing your time and talents. Don't overthink it, just give. Take risks in faith. Is there something God has been calling you to do, but fear has held you back? Maybe it's starting a new project, mending a broken relationship, or stepping into a leadership role. Take the leap and trust God with the results. Be patient. If you're waiting for a breakthrough, your career, your family, or your spiritual life, remember that God's timing is perfect. Keep sowing seeds of faithfulness and trust that the harvest will come. Stay consistent. Don't grow weary in doing good. Whether it's daily prayer, serving in your community, or working toward a long-term goal, consistency is key. Trust God's sovereignty. When life feels uncertain, remind yourself that God is in control. His plans are always better than ours, even when we can't see the bigger picture. As you reflect on Ecclesiastes 11 verse 1, I challenge you to ask yourself, what bread is God calling me to cast upon the waters? Maybe it's a financial gift, an act of service, or a step of faith in your personal life. Whatever it is, don't hold back. Trust that God will honor your obedience and bring about a harvest in His perfect timing. Ecclesiastes 11 verse 1 isn't just a verse to read and admire. It's a call to action, a divine blueprint for living a life that's deeply rooted in faith, generosity, and trust in God's perfect timing. When we cast our bread upon the waters, we're not just performing a random act of kindness or taking a blind leap of faith. We're participating in something far greater than ourselves. We're aligning our hearts with God's purposes, stepping into His promises, and partnering with Him to bring about His kingdom on earth. Imagine this. Every time you give, whether it's your time, your resources, or your love, you're sowing a seed into the unseen. You may not see the results right away, but God is at work. He's taking your small acts of faithfulness and multiplying them in ways you can't even imagine. That's the beauty of this principle. It's not about what you can do, it's about what God can do through you when you surrender your efforts to Him. But here's the thing, living this way requires courage. It means letting go of control and trusting that God will catch what you cast. It means giving even when it doesn't make sense, loving even when it's hard, and stepping out even when the path ahead is unclear. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. Because when we live with open hands and trusting hearts, we position ourselves to receive God's blessings in ways that far exceed our expectations. Think about it. Every great act of faith in the Bible, from Abraham offering Isaac to the widow giving her last coins, was met with God's faithfulness. The same is true for us. When we give generously, God multiplies. When we step out in faith, God shows up. When we trust His timing, He brings about His perfect plan. This is the divine exchange that happens when we cast our bread upon the waters. So, what does this look like in your life? Maybe it's forgiving someone who hurt you, even when they don't deserve it. Maybe it's giving sacrificially to a cause you believe in, even when money is tight. Maybe it's pursuing a dream God placed in your heart, even when the odds seem stacked against you. Whatever it is, don't hold back. Don't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect conditions. Take the leap. Cast your bread. Trust that God will honor your obedience. And here's the best part. When you live this way, you become a living testimony of God's faithfulness. Your life becomes a story of His provision, His timing, and His goodness. People will see your generosity and wonder where it comes from. They'll witness your courage and be inspired to step out in faith themselves. Your actions will ripple out, touching lives and transforming hearts in ways you may never fully know. So, let's embrace this divine invitation. Let's be people who give freely, love boldly, and trust deeply. Let's sow seeds of kindness and faith, knowing that God is faithful to bring about a harvest in His time. As we do, we'll discover the joy and fulfillment that comes from living a life rooted in His wisdom. And we'll see firsthand that when we cast our bread upon the waters, it always comes back to us, not because of our efforts, but because of His promises.